I'm 71 years old and I need to admit something that still embarrasses me to say out loud. I thought success would fill the silence in my life. It didn't. It just gave the silence better furniture. I'm not telling you this because I want to be seen as wise. I'm telling you because I can feel my time getting shorter, and I don't want to leave this world having lied, even politely, about what my life felt like. These days, mornings come early, not because I'm disciplined, because my body wakes up before my mind is ready. I sit on the edge of the bed and wait for my joints to catch up. There's a moment before I stand where I feel every year I've lived stacked inside me like old paperwork. My house is quiet, not the good kind of quiet you pay for on vacation, the kind that feels like the world forgot you live here. I make coffee and I drink it alone, standing by the sink because sitting down feels too honest sometimes. The window looks out onto a street where people still have somewhere to go. That's the thing about aging. The world keeps making plans and you slowly become a person people plan around. I used to believe that if I built enough, if I earned enough, achieved enough, proved enough, then I'd feel settled. Like I'd finally deserve peace. I believe that because I grew up in a home where feelings were treated like interruptions. We didn't talk about loneliness. We didn't name it. We worked around it like a stain on the carpet. My father was a proud man, and pride can be cold. He didn't hit us. He didn't scream. But he had a way of looking at you when you disappointed him that made you feel like you had taken up space you hadn't earned. My mother tried to soften him. She did it by keeping things running. Laundry, meals, small kindnesses that never got praised. She was the kind of woman who disappeared into duty and called it love because she didn't have another word. In that house, you learned early what got attention. Achievement got attention. If I brought home good grades, my father would nod once, just one nod, like I'd been granted a small stamp of approval. And I chased that nod. I didn't know I was chasing it. I thought I was becoming a good person. I became the kid teachers liked, the kid who didn't cause trouble, the kid who could be trusted. People said things like, he's going to do something with his life, and it felt like warmth in my chest. It also felt like a job I couldn't quit. By the time I was in my 20s, I'd built a whole personality out of being impressive enough to be safe. I chose work that sounded respectable. I wore the right clothes. I spoke carefully. I learned to look calm even when I wasn't. I married young. She was bright in a way I wasn't. Not loud, just alive. She could sit at the kitchen table and talk about nothing and make it feel like something. She laughed easily. She didn't measure herself every second the way I did. I loved her, and I also used her. I don't mean that in a cruel way. I mean I leaned on her steadiness as proof that I was okay. If she loved me, then I must be doing something right. We had our first baby a couple years in, then another. Suddenly everything felt heavier. Bills, schedules, responsibility. And my old habit woke up like it had been waiting. Prove yourself, be useful, be respected. I got promoted early, not because I was a genius, because I was reliable. I stayed late, I volunteered, I said yes when other people said no. I told myself I was doing it for my family. And I was, partly. But the deeper truth was that I needed the feeling work gave me. That feeling that I mattered, that I was needed, that I was valuable. At home, being valuable was harder. At home, you had to be present. You had to be patient. You had to be seen. At work, you could be praised for being busy. You could hide behind deadlines and still be called dedicated. So I leaned into the world where the rules felt clearer, where success had numbers attached to it, titles, raises, compliments. The first house we bought wasn't fancy, but I remember how proud I was when we got the keys. I held them in my palm like proof I'd escaped something. We took a picture on the front step, my wife smiling, the kids squirming, me standing too straight. I can see it now, and I notice how stiff I look, like I was already posing for someone who wasn't there. The years after that were busy in the way adult life is busy. School drop-offs, grocery runs, birthdays, repairs. But my wife carried the real weight. Not just the chores, the emotional work. She knew which teacher my daughter liked and which one made her anxious. She knew my son's friends' names and the little habits that signaled when he was upset. I knew the big things, report cards, sports schedules. Everything okay? Everything okay became my favorite question because it didn't require a real answer. It lets everyone pretend. There were moments when my kids tried to hand me their world and I treated it like something fragile I didn't know how to hold. My daughter, maybe 12, came to me once with a problem at school. Something about a friend who'd turned on her. I was sitting at the table with mail spread out, calculating bills. I listened while my eyes stayed on paper. I said the right things. "That's not nice. You'll figure it out. Just ignore her." My daughter went quiet. Not dramatic, not angry, just quiet. And I didn't understand that quiet. I thought it meant the problem was solved. Now I understand it meant she learned I wasn't the person to bring pain to. My son was less talkative by nature, but he'd show me things he built. A model plane, a school project, a birdhouse that leaned slightly to one side. He'd hold it up with this careful pride, waiting for my face, and I'd say, "Good job," without really looking, because in my head I was already planning tomorrow. He stopped showing me things, not all at once, gradually, and I barely noticed. That's how it happens, not with one loud moment. It accumulates. I missed events, sometimes physically, because work needed me, sometimes emotionally, because I was there but not there. I'd sit in a school auditorium clapping when everyone clapped, checking my watch. I'd be thinking about whether I'd left early enough, whether my boss noticed I was gone, whether I should have stayed. My wife would glance at me, and I could see it in her eyes. She was disappointed, but she was too tired to fight. We didn't have explosive arguments. Our marriage wasn't like that. Our marriage was silent. Two people walking around each other's disappointment, hoping it would dissolve if we didn't name it. My wife would say, late at night, "You don't have to take every call." Or, "And they were looking for you." Or, "You're here but you're far away." And I'd get irritated. Not because she was wrong, because she was right. And I didn't know how to change without feeling like I was failing. That's the ugly thing about chasing success. It gives you an identity you're afraid to set down. If you stop, who are you? If you slow down, what are you worth? I didn't know. So I kept pushing. More responsibility, more hours, more recognition. People at work liked me. They called me dependable. I became the man they leaned on, and I was proud of that. I didn't see what it was doing to my house, or maybe I saw it, but I treated it like the price of winning. Years moved. The kids grew up. They got older and more private, and I told myself it was normal. I didn't understand that they were practicing a life where I wasn't central, because I had never made myself central to their emotional life. When my daughter left for college, she hugged my wife for a long time. Then she hugged me quickly, polite, like you hug an uncle. I remember standing there after she drove away, feeling a strange emptiness. I told myself I was just sad she was leaving, but deeper than that, I felt something else. I felt unfamiliar to my own child. My son followed a few years later. He was always more self-contained, but I remember the same thing. The goodbyes were clean, too clean. I kept working. I kept building. My career went well. I won't pretend it didn't. I rose. I earned it. I provided. We moved into a nicer house. We bought better furniture. We took better vacations. And still, in the quiet moments, there was a hollow spot that none of it touched. At the time, I thought I just needed the next thing. A bigger win, a better title, a little more money. I didn't realize the hollow spot was the part of me that wanted to be known, not admired. Then retirement came. On my last day, they gave me a plaque, a small speech, handshakes, some jokes about how I'd finally get to relax. I smiled. I thanked everyone. I drove home with the plaque on the passenger seat like a passenger I didn't know what to do with. That first week of retirement felt like a vacation. Sleeping in, no meetings, no pressure. The second week felt strange. The third week felt like someone had removed the noise I'd been using to avoid myself. My wife had her routines. She gardened. She talked to friends. She cooked. She called the kids. I wandered the house. I fixed things that didn't need fixing. I realized I didn't have hobbies. I had achievements. I didn't have joy. I had goals. That's a hard discovery at 71. It's like opening a drawer you've never looked in and finding it empty. Then my wife got sick. It started small. Fatigue, a cough, a doctor visit that turned into more visits. Waiting rooms have a smell, disinfectant and old anxiety. When the doctor finally said what it was, my wife held my hand. She didn't cry. She just squeezed, like she was reminding me she was still here. The kids came around more after that. They called her. They visited. They brought food. They sat with her and talked in a way that was warm and effortless. And I sat there too, grateful and ashamed at the same time. Grateful because my wife was loved. Ashamed because I could feel how close they were to her and how careful they were with me. One night after they left, my wife and I sat in the living room with the TV off. The room was dim, quiet. She said softly, "They love you." I nodded because I believed that. Then she said, "But you spent so long trying to be successful that you forgot how to be present." I didn't argue. I couldn't. I wanted to say I did it for us. But we both knew that wasn't the whole story. I did it for approval, for the feeling of being safe from criticism. My wife died in the spring. The kind of spring where everything outside blooms like nothing happened. After the funeral, the world kept moving. People went back to work. The kids went back to school. My children checked on me. They were kind. They did what good children do. But something was missing. My wife had been to the bridge. The warmth, the glue. Without her, the calls were shorter. The visits were scheduled. It became an obligation. And I don't say that with bitterness. I say it with recognition. You can't spend decades building a relationship based on usefulness and then expect it to turn into closeness when you're old. You can't replace presence with provision and then ask people to feel comfort in your arms. One afternoon, my daughter came over to help me sort through my wife's things. We sat at the table with a box of letters and photographs. She pulled out a picture of herself as a little girl. Messy hair, missing teeth, a big smile. She stared at it longer than I expected. I said, "You were happy." She didn't look up. She said, "I was happy with Mom." The words weren't cruel. They were just true. My throat tightened. I said, "I thought I was doing everything right." She nodded slowly, like she understood what I believed. Then she said, "You always cared what people thought, even at home." And for a moment I wanted to defend myself, to list everything I'd done, the bills I paid, the nights I stayed late. But I saw her face. Not angry, not hateful, just tired. Like she'd carried this truth for a long time. She said, "It was like you were always somewhere else." That was the turning point. Not because it was dramatic, but because it stripped away my last excuses. Success didn't fill the silence, it created it. Because while I was chasing approval, I wasn't building the kind of quiet that feels safe. I was building the kind of quiet that feels empty. Now I sit in my house and the silence has shape. It sits in the chair across from me. It follows me from room to room. I can't fix the past. I can't go back and sit on the edge of my daughter's bed and listen properly. I can't go back and look at my son's birdhouse like it mattered. Time doesn't return the way money sometimes can. It doesn't negotiate. If you're listening to me, I'm not going to tell you what you must do. I don't know your life. I only know what I wish someone had told me when I still had years to spend. Success feels good at the moment. So does praise. So does being needed. But none of that holds you at night. None of that sits with you when the house goes quiet. The people who love you want something simpler than your achievements. They want your attention, your patience, your ordinary presence. And if you keep delaying that, if you keep thinking there will be more time, one day you'll realize the time you were saving for later is gone. If this means something to you, and you're willing, you can leave a thought behind. Not because I need comfort, just because it helps to know these quiet regrets don't belong to one person. I'm 71 now. My days are smaller. I take my pills. I go to the store. I sit by the window. Sometimes my children call, and I try not to sound too eager when I answer. I don't have a big ending. I don't have a lesson wrapped in ribbon. I only have this. I thought success would fill the silence. It didn't. It just kept me busy long enough that I didn't notice the silence was becoming my life.